is Troop Chaplaincy. You know, it's a chaplaincy with a modern troop, or guide to troop chaplains and their importance on youth. Because I didn't give the updated name of the presentation before Neil put the slides together. Sorry, Neil. All right, we're going to cover a few different things. We're going to cover what is the role of the chaplain, the importance to church members. We're going to have a panel interview, and then we are going to have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, hold them till the end. We will give time to go over them. So, what is the role of the chaplain? There we go. If a chaplain is operated by a religious organization, it is customary for the religious leader or one delegated by them to serve as chaplain. A unit not operated by a religious organization may select a chaplain for the unit from the local clergy, which is not a word that most Latter-day Saints are very familiar with. Leaders who are not clergy can serve as a religious emblems coordinator. So, again, if you're not an actual clergy, you're a religious emblems coordinator, but you can still have a chaplain's aide. All right, what is their role? They provide a spiritual tone for all troop meetings and camping experiences. They assure members and their leaders of their interests in them and their activities. You're not just there to hawk a message, you're actually there to take a very personal role in their lives. Provide spiritual counseling service when needed or requested. They provide opportunities for all youth to grow in their relationship with God or their understanding of God and their fellow scouts. And they encourage scouts to participate in the religious emblem programs of their respective faiths. Okay, the four chaplains, wonderful story. Anyone who served in the U.S. military might be already familiar with them. George L. Fox, Alexander D. Good, Clark V. Pauling, and John P. Washington. These four men met together in chaplain school in Harvard while getting ready to ship overseas. And on the very, very, very early morning of February 3rd, 1943, in the North Atlantic, the ship they were on, the SS Dorchester, was torpedoed. Now, it knocked out power immediately. Ship was without lights, without power, without steering, and going down. The chaplains organized and calmed the soldiers. There were 903 people aboard. They organized them for evacuation. They calmed them on deck. They said prayers for them. They guided them to lifeboats. When they ran out of life jackets, they gave their own. And as the ship went under, they could be seen still on deck, on the bow, holding hands, singing hymns, and saying prayers for the soldiers who could make it. And of the 903 people on board, only 240 were able to be evacuated. They were recognized, and they tried to give them the Medal of Honor, but it turns out you can't get the Medal of Honor if you've never engaged the enemy in combat. So Congress unanimously passed a new resolution and created the Four Chaplains Medal, which holds as high an honor as the Medal of Honor for these four. And they said, it's amazing. These four men came from different areas, from different backgrounds, from different creeds, from different denominations. They had nothing that linked them. Well, except for they were all BSA leaders. It's a fun little fact. All right, why is this important for church leaders? We don't have actual clergy, okay? I mean, we are a volunteer organization by and large, but we go to seminary. Well, you guys all went to seminary. I didn't, I'm a convert. But we don't have actual trained or paid clergy. So why is a chaplain important for us? Well, there's four reasons why this is important. One, it gives exposure to different faiths. It helps develop personal testimony. It's an additional support for youth, and it assists with religious emblems. And we're going to get into more detail on each of those. I see a lot of you guys taking pictures, and that's awesome, but there's more information on the next slide. All right. Exposure to different faiths. It helps teach scouts how to interact with people from different backgrounds. Okay, big elephant in the room, we all know where that's going to come in handy in life. Well, this is one of the fundamental ways to start that early. It helps train them to be able to interact with many people. It actually helps strengthen one's own understanding of their own faith, to be able to interact with people of other faiths. And it helps youth embrace the ways we are all connected. Sorry, I didn't realize it's going to be picking up my phone every time I hit it. How does it help develop personal testimony? It gives scouts examples of faith outside of the family unit. It offers youth a chance to see faith in a real-world setting. Faith is great on Sunday when you're passing the sacrament. How does it affect us when we're at week-long camp? Right? How does it affect us when we're away from the family? What is it like when I'm not with my young men's group or my young women's group? And I like this quote, probably it's my quote, but you don't know what you believe until you know what you don't believe. Exposure to many creeds helps strengthen a testimony in that way. Okay. Additional support for youth. Allows exposure to spirituality that may not be present in the home. A friend of mine actually brought up in last week's University of Scouting, he happens to be the course director for this year's Wood Badge, see him for more information. I hawk Wood Badge a lot, sorry. But that when they had their interfaith activity for their scouts, many of them held on to the paperwork and pamphlet because that was as close to scripture as they ever got, because they didn't get church at home. And so the interfaith message that their chaplain provided for their unit was as close to a message from God that they had seen. Okay? It provides a safe space for them to learn and grow. And it helps take the load from other adult leaders. You do not want your scoutmaster to have to fill all roles. And finally, it assists with religious emblems, encourages and guides you through earning their faith's award. Or, if their faith doesn't have an award, finding one that might fit. And because many youth and even religious leaders may not be familiar with their award, I defy you to go to a youth and say, oh, just ask your bishop for the Vanguard Award. They'll know what I'm talking about. Or even many rabbi, go and see the Ez Chaim Award. I'm sure they know what it is. They probably don't. All right? So we got a wonderful panel for you guys. We have three gentlemen here. Don Larson, PhD. Go ahead and raise your hand, Don. Don is a BSA chaplain. He's an NCAP camp inspector. He's been part of the National Camping School facility. How many years now? Faculty?
8 years.
8 years, yeah. He's been around. And he's on the council executive board. We have Mark Sagers. Sagers. I got it right the first time. My name is Zuke. I shouldn't slaughter other people's names. It seems blasphemous. He's the Philmont chaplain currently, National Jamboree staff, multiple Philmont staff positions, and 44 years in unit, district, council, area, and national positions. And finally, Jacques Behar. Chaplain in multiple scout trainings, currently serves in 5 councils and 2 executive boards, so he wears many hats. He's a life member of the Vanguard International Scouting Association. Let's give it up for these 3 gentlemen for taking time to be with us. Now hopefully I've given us plenty of time. Well, we're way ahead of schedule actually, so that's the first. But I've have some sample questions, some things, some discussions that we can get started on. If these trigger a question for you guys, keep that in the back of your mind or write it down. Later on we'll send the mic out and you guys can ask these questions as well. All right, first off, someone. I should have flipped that. Can you give an example of a situation where a chaplain was able to help a youth in a way that maybe a typical leader may not have been able to? Go at it, guys. What are you guys on?
Hello?
There you go.
At Boy Scout camp, I've been 31 years. How many of you have ever seen a homesick kid?
Adult.
Yeah.
Or an adult.
But as a camp director, I used to send the chaplain out because the chaplain was always comforting. 90% of the time encouraged the youth to stay in camp, which is where we want them to be, and got them right back into the program. And it was the calming words.
That was the very thought I was going to have is it's, at camp, you've got a number of people who can come down, including the camp director. Okay, thanks. The reality is, as a camp chaplain, I made time during the week when the high points came down and the camp director is caught up in all the little tiny things that take up their time to sit down with the camp director and just debrief and let them vent, and it takes away the stress. I don't see scoutmasters doing that for a camp director. It's just sort of the opposite. But the reality is a chaplain, whether you're at a camp or with the troop, really is there to be a specialized assistant scoutmaster focusing on those religious factors that are an important part of the boy's life. And I've been thinking about this week especially, and so the chaplain is there to make sure that everyone fits in somehow, to find a place for themselves where they can experience those feelings of reverence, of respect, whether it's standing before the flag in a flag ceremony, whether it's sitting down as a troop around the campfire in the evening with the scoutmaster reading scriptures.
We got a mic down.
We're good.
We're good? Oh, need a blessing? Okay. Chaplain, you got any chaplains for a blessing?
And the reality is that we make sure that everyone has a chance to experience something that builds that relationship with their Heavenly Father, whatever their background. And you never know who in your troop or in your group is going to come to you and you think they're part of us, and they're not. I had a Scouts on service one morning and had one of our staff members come up to me in tears. He said, "Thanks for those words." And he wasn't even Christian. He was a Jewish scouter, and I didn't know. No one, I don't think anyone in camp knew that he was Jewish, and yet we had a chance to bring him in. So I think within a troop, to have someone who can focus on where every individual is and how they are reacting in the activities of scouting that reinforce those religious feelings is truly important.
And it's important to be prepared for about anything. You never know what's going to happen in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, the strange knock on the door when somebody needs a little comfort about just receiving a death notice. You just have to be ready for about anything. And you need to kind of widen your scope a little bit to not focus uniquely on the LDS, but to be able to deal with those that may not be of our faith, may not have a faith, and are struggling with their faith.
Just when I was a scout, my very first year at scout camp, Camp Tomahawk, which doesn't exist anymore, but one of my favorite places on earth, day 3 at camp, and we're making breakfast, and randomly a mom walks in. A mom and another woman I didn't recognize. It was the mom of one of our scouts. Like, I don't know why she's here. We were in Salt Lake. We were 1371 near Alta. No real reason why she'd be in the neighborhood of Camp Tomahawk out in the Uintas. They had driven all night because her son and her husband were with us, and their daughter had just been struck and killed by a car. And she came out to let them know and to retrieve them. And the neighbor had come with them so she didn't have to drive alone. And I can only imagine how a chaplain or someone who had training or that sensitive knowledge could have helped them before just sending them back on the road to drive for hours now that, my friend, fellow scout, was now an only child. So I wish we had had a chaplain or someone in that position during that time. So thank you, gentlemen. How do you balance your own beliefs and faith with the potentially opposing faith of a youth in your unit?
I'll start again. I'm Jewish. I'm also a life member of Vanguard. I like to learn. I try to learn as much as I can about as many religions as I can, because in scouting, the tent is open for all. And the more I know, the more I can grow, the more I can help scouts and scouters in need.
You just need to be prepared to and understand what you're dealing with, what they believe, and they may not believe.
We have regular prayers at Scouts on Service. We begin with prayer and end in prayer. And often we begin with a moment of silence because that's pretty generic and everybody can participate and not feel threatened. But then at the end of the Scouts on Service, I'd say let's prepare for prayer. And most everybody grabs their hat and starts to take their hat off. And I grab my yarmulke and put it on and say, some people that you are sitting with find reverence in covering their heads. It's important. And then we'd have a prayer in Hebrew and give them a sense of what reverence is from a lot of different places. Now, it doesn't change me as a Christian to pray in Hebrew, to begin that prayer addressing Heavenly Father in those words. In fact, it's a precious thing for me to feel that spirit. And so we all come before God with our own beliefs, but we come before God. And when you can have in your troop, everyone feel equal, that they're bowing before God and learning and growing and finding peace in that setting, that changes the entire feeling of the troop. And so, it's important for us to be sensitive, and we don't have to be professionals. We don't have to have a lot of background as a chaplain, but you can be sensitive. Now, there is a lot of training for chaplaincy, and most of that training has gone online. In fact, the National Camping School doesn't have a chaplaincy section anymore. It's online, and anyone can do that training. It doesn't take long. And basically, what happens is that you, as an individual who have been certified by your nomination to be a chaplain, and so you may not be a paid professional clergy, but if you go to your bishop or your stake president and say, I need to serve in my troop as a chaplain, they'll sign you off, and you can be a chaplain. It's a practical thing, it's a realistic thing, and you bring your heart to do that job, and you find that you're lifted to the level that you need to be.
I did not know that. I learned something today. I'm very happy about that. So you discuss, belief in God. That ties very nicely to my next slide, almost like you're cheating. Don, I wasn't actually thinking you're cheating. But a youth tells you they don't think they believe in God, and that they actually are a insert religion or random belief they read on the internet here. How do you handle this?
I'll start again. The thing is, as long as they believe in something, when you get a young scout, they may not have formulated what they really believe in, and they may be groping, and that's okay. Just help them find something and comfort. Comfort is the best thing.
So I'll interject here while gentlemen are still gathering thoughts, because I did not let them know these slides in advance. I'm springing them on there. I called myself an atheist when I was a scout, because, teenagers know everything, and that was my only thought, and, well, obviously there isn't a God, I'm in the center of the universe, and I'm all that there is. And the thing to remember is that by the way, I converted, I got baptized at 20, I just got done working for the church, so slightly different story now. The thing to remember is a lot of these youth, you can't expect a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old testimony, no matter what their faith is, because they're just now coming out from under their parents' shadow. They are now learning about their own faith through their own eyes for the first time. So would you guys say that it is fair to say that it's like, okay, you don't believe in God. How do you believe in how the Scout Law applies, or how you're connected?
Well, that's true. That's the way you start off, and try to get them to vocalize what a supreme being may be, or what doing their duty to their beliefs.
I would argue a scout providing community service is still in service of God, whether or not they identify it as such. When you're in service of your fellow man, and actually it was the Scout Law and the values I learned in scouting that led me to my testimony. My own scoutmaster, who was not a member, but took me aside and said, why do you adhere to the Scout Law? Well, I want to be a good person. Yeah, but why? Because I feel we're all connected. And I feel that what I put out into the world, to make it better, if that's what I'm here to do, then that's what I'll do. Because then great, you're not atheist. He's like, and if that's your faith, that's your faith. And he kind of helped that ember. So I do hear from some people occasionally, it's like, well, you can't be a scout if you're not Christian. Well, you can't be a scout if you're atheist. We had a Wiccan participant at Woodbatch a couple of years ago, and during the interfaith activity, she had a very, very wonderful service, and her patrol buoyed her up and helped her, and she thanked the mountain. She thanked the mountain for the protection, for the shelter, for the facilities. She pledged that we would love it and try to help maintain it and protect it in turn, and that was kind of a give and take. And it's like, it may not be your belief, it may be something random a 12-year-old has read on the internet, but if that doesn't still adhere to many of the Scout laws, then I think we, even as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, can support that in scouting. Do you guys agree, or? Yeah. Okay. So
The point is that we're helping youth, our young men, young women, to have experiences that will bolster them, that strengthen them, and we're not in charge as a BSA chaplain, a troop chaplain or whatever, is not, while they may be certified by their denomination, their job is to further those BSA principles, which doesn't necessarily an advocate for your own belief. It means that you are an advocate for the youth in helping them grow. So that's how we do it.
Well, and as we heard in our wonderful keynote address as well, BSA beliefs, BSA principles, are church beliefs and church principles. You will have stronger youth by encouraging their faith where they are at. And you will have youth that come around later in life, like I did, by having strong faith-based practices in your unit and encouraging them and meeting them where they're at. Okay, while we get that settled, next question. A scout approaches you with a concern about something they heard their religious leaders say. They don't feel like they can ask that person or their parents about it. This goes back to offering a safe space for scouts. What do? How do you handle that?
Back to listening and comfort. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. They're coming to you and they're looking for a safe place. And you have to make that place safe for them. So listening, and I like to use the phrase, God made us with 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen twice as much as we talk.
It's important too that you not badmouth that leader or say that they're negative or wrong or whatever, but to listen to them, to encourage the youth to talk about what their feelings are. And they do need to probably iron it out with their religious leader. They need to be comfortable to service that with them.
Sometimes all it takes is just giving them a chance to express how they're feeling now and their uncertainty. And sometimes all those uncertainties go away with that expression. And then they can go forward.
In the IT world, in software development, we call it rubber ducking it, where there's a problem that you're encountering and you can't figure out how to get around it. And there was an engineer, I think he worked at Google, who had a rubber duck on his desk. And just by explaining the problem to the rubber duck, by breaking it down to its very barest issues, by having someone to talk to, he usually could come up with the solution on his own. And so I love what I'm hearing here, that sometimes your goal is actually just to help them get their thoughts in an order that they can process it. How often have we seen youth, especially this generation of youth, that, oh, I didn't like that, so I'm now going to shut down and reject everything else I hear. I don't know why I didn't like it, but it got a strong visceral reaction from me, and that's what I'm going to focus on. So as acting as kind of mentors in that way, I agree, you do not want to demean or badmouth any religion, but you also don't want to necessarily fall back on the, well, they're your leader. Just listen. Just listen and do what they say, because that's not helpful either for that stage in life. All right, a member of your unit is subjected to, or is subjecting others to broad stereotypes at camp. Camp is the great melting pot of the council. You're going to meet all sorts of youth there. All Mormons are, Jewish people are all just ... How do you help that youth? And how do you handle it with other leaders?
It's difficult for me, especially here in this state. Prior to us combining the council and making it larger, so in the northern part, I was it. I was the token Jew. We now have Jews in Salt Lake. There's a very good and solid troop in Salt Lake and a pack. But in the northern part, I was it, and I was stereotyped. And it's hard. It's hard to be stereotyped and not be able to fit in. I was a round peg that they tried to pound into that square hole.
You don't want to generalize anything. If somebody doesn't understand the Jewish religion or the Latter-day Saint or the Muslim or whatever it is, you don't want to generalize, but maybe encourage them to learn a little bit more about them and become more familiar.
Sometimes you use scripture and you quote a scripture and say, do you recognize this scripture? And then you tell them, no, this is from the Quran. It's not the New Testament, it's not the Book of Mormon, or it's from the Torah, or it's from whatever. And begin to see that scripture from different traditions is much alike, and it reinforces everything that we feel. And so we give experiences that help sensitize to the differences and to our respect for those differences.
You know, I'm kind of reminded, I've been on both sides of this, a couple different sides. Growing up non-LDS, half Japanese, funny name, in the Salt Lake area, I was kind of the token as well. And our troop was kind of the token troop, and I won't lie, we leaned into it. Like, we're the misfits. My second year at camp, Evergreen, I think, and it's morning flag ceremony, you know, please prepare yourself in the manner, we're going to have a moment of silence. And the rest of the camp falls silent, heads bowed, hats off, and our troop is just snickering. Look at all these weirdos. They're all going to leave, you know, to get back home in time for church Sunday. They're not going to be here the entire time like we are. And most of them are totally misbehaved. We're so much better. And our scoutmaster told us later, he goes, a scout is reverent. A scout is reverent not to what other people believe. A scout is reverent to the fact they believe. You don't have to believe what they believe. You just have to respect their right to believe it. Which means, shut up, bow your head, be silent. I've also had a scout that, you know, admittedly grew up only LDS. And his first exposure to another prayer, he leans over and goes, Zuke, you did it wrong. You prayed wrong. Do we need to redo the prayers? Learning opportunities, right? How would you follow up with the leaders, though? Hey, your youth, you know, little Bobby was really horrible at this thing, and he said some terrible things about this, or you would expect adult leaders to be able to handle that. How would you, as adult leaders and chaplains, deal with other leaders?
Again, you need to talk and find out what that leader's issue is. That leader may not understand. They may not be educated. I was at a scout function, personally, and a leader told me to remove my hat during prayer. As you just heard, cover my head. And the leader came up and said, if you don't take it off, I will knock it off. So it's education. Education at the adult level, and hopefully that filters down to the youth level.
In camp, you can do that at Scoutmasters Conference, where you get with the Scoutmasters and you say, I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about a general principle. We've had some incidents. We need to make sure that all of us are reflecting the principles of the Scout Oath and Law. And then the one-on-one conferences where you sit down and say, we need to help youth in your unit have a little bit more respect for those around them. And so it's not attacking, it is educating, and there are opportunities for that.
And we find in doing some of the conflict resolution that we have to do a film on, that many of the problems are introduced by the adults, and they're the ones that are really causing the problems. So it's sometimes you need to take them off to the side and get to know and help them get back on the course.
Yeah, I've been in an adult course where our interfaith worship was we sang High on a Mountaintop, we read an article from the Ensign, we discussed the Doctrine and Covenants, and then we sang We Thank Thee, O Lord, for the Prophet. And when I asked, how is this an interfaith worship? They said, well, because everyone is welcome to attend. So it seems like an opportunity for maybe some additional training. How do you balance your role as a mentor in areas of faith while maintaining respect to family beliefs that may not overlap? A bit of a lead up to this. And I see my committee chair back there. He's actually familiar with this story. We're on a camp out and it's freezing. It is frigid. And one of our youth asks for a blessing. And so we're in his tent and we give a blessing. And his tent mate, who's Hindu, is looking at us wide-eyed going, what the crap is that? Oh, okay, right. And so we started to explain, the meaning behind the blessing and why we do things the way we do and what we're invoking. And he's asking questions, and he's asking more and more questions. And, they're coming from a sincere place of curiosity. Some of it's very confusing, some of it he doesn't understand, some of it he does find interesting. And I suddenly found myself hit with the wall of, how much of this do I educate a youth who's asking questions, and at what point am I proselyting and maybe I should talk to the parents first? How does a chaplain help navigate that line?
It's a fine line. It is a fine line. But if they're asking questions, they're asking because they're curious. They want to learn. Education is a good thing.
It's like talking to a 6-year-old who says, where do these come from? I mean, what do you want to say? You answer the question to the degree to which they can understand it and need it. And so you may not need to talk about chromosomes, but you can talk about, the hospital. The reality is that when we deal with kids who have curiosity, sometimes they just need an immediate answer. They don't need to have the theological foundation. And so we give them a general answer, then if they're still curious, they can go to the next step. If they're still curious, maybe we go talk with their parents and say, these are some of the curiosities that we've seen. What do you want us to do? How do you want us to help?
You do have to be very careful that you don't cross the line into proselyting, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. And, we had a situation, and I had one of my staff out here somewhere, and we had an individual who was asking missionary type questions, and I had to kind of back out of that. I could answer the questions, but I couldn't, proselyte on that. So we kind of allowed the missionaries to visit with this individual later.
I don't think there is one size fits all answer to that question. It's kind of a follow-up to it then. Let's say the roles were reversed and my Hindu scout had wanted something that I didn't have an answer for and couldn't do, and my other scout, who's a member of the church, started asking questions. Would it benefit me as a leader? Keep in mind, I was just a scoutmaster. I don't say just a scoutmaster, but to familiarize myself with the beliefs of other members in my unit. As chaplains, do you feel a need to familiarize yourself with every faith out there, or how do you roll with that?
Sometimes you let the youth be the expert, and maybe at dinner explain to the rest of the unit, these are some things that we believe, and you'll find that curiosity is manifested with a lot of attention, and the boys want to know, and it creates greater commonality and greater acceptance. So sometimes you don't have to provide the answer, you can let the youth become the expert.
I I like that a lot. And it's also great to have that kind of moment of communion where they can share their own thoughts, because even youth in your own faith are going to have some insights because they have experiences that are their own that other youth will resonate with more than just you on high as the adult leader. So I like that idea of empowering the youth to become the experts. Thank you. All right. Certain families are resistant to youth learning or accepting other religious faiths as they worry about their youth becoming too woke. How do you encourage both youth and adults to apply a Scout as Reverend?
The thing is, in their religion, I do believe you should believe in something. I'm not here to force any particular religion down anybody's throat. And there are some parents that I've dealt with along the way that say, my kid is, and they will do this. I'm guessing that that kid will rebel at some point, because kids are kids. And if they ask a question, I will try to answer give them an honest answer. Again, it's back to, I try to educate myself in many religions so I can help many religions.
I think it's important to note, and I'm speaking specifically to the Crossroads of the West Council in this instance, we were impacted, probably safe to say, the most when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints withdrew its charter. Our most recent state of the council from a week ago, I think, we are up to 8,500 Scouts. That's down from, I want to say, close to 300,000. 225. 225. I rounded way up. So, guess what? Your youth, and if you have kids, your kids are going to be scouting with people of other faiths. Having that hard line approach of, no, this is what we do, this is why we do it because I said so. Like you said, it's really funny to a lot of people I grew up with that I became a member of the church because I was the atheist and they were all, no, this is what we do because this is what I was told to do. And they all left. So having that hard line approach can be very difficult. That's great for youth. How would you best approach that with parents? Some who, let's be honest, might still view you as babysitters.
That is a problem, especially in this council, where parents still have the belief that I'm going to drop my kid off for an hour, they're going to play basketball, they might have a flag ceremony, maybe, and probably won't wear a uniform. Those days pretty much have passed, and troops now are where the youth want to be there. It's not something they're signed up for. And so they want to be there, they want to learn, they want to have fun. And this isn't a religious item, but in the troop which I belong, 407 in Kaysville, we have 15, 16, 17-year-olds still hanging around. And we asked at boards of review, why are you still here? And they said, because we never realized scouting could be fun.
Bring them back in. All right. Your unit wants to start having a Scouts-owned service while camping, but cannot make it work because certain families don't want their youth gone over Sunday. How do you balance the church needs, traditions with this? Some background to this question, because this also comes from personal experience. When my ward had a troop, 871 on Spanish Fork, there was an activity that we were going to have to miss Sunday. And we told them, we can have, with your permission and the permission of the local stake president, we could have a service with our unit. Or we, in uniform, could attend service in the area we're at. It's just not going to be safe for us to drive back that night, and we would rather not risk it. We'd rather spend the night and leave right after service. He said, well, you have our entire Aaronic priesthood. No one will be there to serve sacrament. To which we said, how about their dads? Well, no, that's not how we do things. The deacons have to be here to do it. You're not allowed to do that. Which was kind of more of a tradition. That is the call of, the church leader. But now that we are not necessarily beholden to that in that way, how would you approach a situation like this? Well, I'm still encouraging Scouts to have a Scouts own service.
Well, the thing is that an interfaith or Scouts own doesn't have to be done on a Sunday. And I used to go to family gatherings with friends, and we would talk about this, and that family is a very large LDS family. And I asked the question, what day is the Sabbath? Could be any day. And in scouting, I personally, if I'm on a nice long hike and we're taking a break and we're overlooking a bluff, and that's a good time to have an interfaith service right there. It wasn't a Sunday. Happened to be a Tuesday. What's the difference?
Can't be on a Tuesday. It's blasphemy right there. Everyone knows this is a Friday to Saturday night gig.
We would have Scouts own service every day of the week. We'd start at 7 o'clock in the morning and have a short 15-minute service. We'd sing and pray and have thoughts and participate every day of the week. And whether it's just the staff there or a handful of leaders, it became such a tradition that 2/3 of the camp would be in the outdoor chapel to begin the day. And we would miss breakfast. It was a chance for us to come and I purposely didn't choose religious themes, but I used the principles of the Scout Oath and Law as the theme, and then related that to how we live. And so the sense of reverence came through the principle of Scout Oath and Law. And kids came, and they'd come again and again and again. It was the same people every day and more. So, and we were not a unified group in terms of all being the same. We had Assembly of God and Catholics and Buddhists and Muslims. And everyone had some kind of reinforcement, personal religious belief.
I think it might be not popular opinion, but safe to say that for some people, a lot of our faith specifically, in our church, we rely a little bit too much on tradition. If it's not in a hymnal sandwich, it wasn't an actual service. We sing a hymn, we say a benediction, we have a speaker, we share a message, we have another hymn, we say a closing, yay, that was church. And nothing other than that is church. But I'd like to share with you something I've never actually shared with anyone. We never had Scouts on service for my unit. I told you, I grew up in a non-denominational unit in Salt Lake, and there's this beautiful place up Big Cottonwood Canyon, the Millbee Fork trailhead, leads up to the three sister lakes, Blanche, Vivian, and Florence, and in the center of the three of them is Sundial Peak. It's one of the most beautiful places in the Wasatch Front, in my opinion. And my scout leaders encouraged us to have a Scouts own service that wasn't a Scouts own service. He said, just go off within view of your buddy and have a moment. And I found this great little overlook that overlooked this huge waterfall that goes back down into Big Cottonwood Canyon. And in the distance you can see the haze of Salt Lake City. So you knew where, home is somewhere in that brown cloud, but up here it's nice and clear. And that was the very first time I ever had in my life that there might be some connection here. I might be connected to this world in some way other than I am the center of it. It was my first spiritual thought, just being there in nature. And it wasn't a hymnal sandwich. There wasn't an opening and closing prayer. The name of God or Christ was never mentioned, and it was entirely on my own. And it was just that encouragement from my leaders to have a moment, you know, to be surrounded by Heavenly Father's creation and let His own natural beauty and words speak to me and speak to my soul, that changed my life forever. So I can't really say that's my testimony, but it's just my first memory of a spiritual moment brought me through scouting and that encouragement of finding worship where you are. So before we open up to general questions and answers, you know, is there anything else you guys would like to add? All right. We do have a mic to go around, or you guys can come up if you'd like. We have a question in the back.
Sure. So about the position. Thank you. With regard, it's not live, is it?
Yeah.
Try again.
Hello. So with regard to the position of chaplain, we've heard some apparently discrepant interpretations here. In our troop, we appointed someone to be a chaplain. I take it this is not to be done. He just happens to be a member of a Latter-day Saint bishopric. Does that qualify him in some way as clergy? Do we have to, if we want an actual chaplain, do we have to go through this training that was mentioned? And does it have to be permitted by some religious leader?
The reality is when you call or ask someone to be a scoutmaster, you expect them to be trained. Well, all adults ought to have some kind of training, and there is a short online chaplain training. It doesn't take long. It's maybe a half hour, and it deals with basic principles because the person is expected to be a clerk, have some experience. And so you can ask somebody to be a clerk, but they like filling out the adult form and signing it so that you have a background check. You simply ask their denomination, is it all right if they serve as a chaplain in our unit? So it's just a formality that reinforces the fact that we expect people to know what they're doing.
Every youth deserves a trained leader, you know. And at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, but truly the decision in that regard falls back to the charter organization and the charter organization representative. So long as that member of the bishopric feels comfortable, and I'm assuming as a member of the bishopric he has experience being in a bishopric to fulfill that role and quick half-hour training, Bob's your uncle. Thank you very much. We have another question.
We have a good cross-section of leaders here from all across the nation. How many of you had chaplains, adult chaplains in your units? I think this is a little bit new. My wife and I in our business, we sponsor a boy troop and a girl troop. We will leave here challenged and excited about finding a chaplain, and we'll promise to do it the right way. I think it's kind of new because, you know, it's not something that has been a part of our tradition as Latter-day Saints to have a chaplain, other than the boys assigned as a chaplain. But to have an adult leader, we'll make sure this happens.
Well, and that is kind of the reason why, you know, I suggested this panel for last year's discussion. We're doing it again this year, is because typically, why do we need a chaplain? Our entire troop is nothing but the young men's. They're all priesthood holders, right? The scoutmaster is the deacon's form advisor. You know, who needs that? But we're not in that world anymore.
The thing is not only should you have a chaplain, just like you have a scoutmaster, and a senior patrol leader, you have a chaplain, and then you have a youth chaplain's aide for the troop. And the chaplain's aide just gets guidance from the chaplain to let the youth run it.
Also, the position of chaplain's aide does qualify for advancement.
Yes.
So, when you need positions, we need chaplain's aides. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Two over there.
Sorry, Is that on? There we go. There we go. So, we've been involved in scouting for over 50 years, and then we've been away from it for a while, and so this is really wonderful to see the good things that are going on. But I was thinking, as we were scout leaders, we could promote God, family, country. And it was just the social norm. I mean, you just expected everyone to have that basic belief, you know, no matter what faith they were. But it seems like our young people are, it's like turning the orthodox thought of morality on its head, where it's fly a different flag, no family structure, and really God is, you know, the environment or whatever you want to make it. How do you deal with people that want their children to, they want to promote that agenda, they want to proselytize to that agenda, and how would you deal with someone, you know, influencing our young people in that way?
Well, that's going to be our last question, because that's a huge one to handle, and we are going to handle it as best we can. So thank you very much. Gentlemen, do you have?
I think it goes back to the more you hammer on a kid, the worse it's going to get. They're going to rebel. And so if you have that type of a parent who hammers, the kid's going to rebel. You might want to talk to the parent. You might want to encourage the parent and get them to see that the more they hammer, the more resistance they're going to get from that teenager, because it's usually a teenager.
I think a big thing to remember too about, well, really every generation does this more than the previous. And this current one, we are serving. That is the word to remember. We are serving. More than any before them, they ask questions. They want to know the why. And they are not accepting the just because. And if you hammer on them, and the only reason you can give them is just because, you will lose them. You love them, you give them the information, you support them, and worst case scenario, down the line, they say, you know, I'm not a member of that church, but I remember kind things when I had questions, and my troop chaplain answered my questions, and he loved me, he or she loved me, and I have kind feelings towards that faith and to other people. So the standards may change, but they've actually always been there. You know, the fun thing about the word family is it's one of the few words that defines itself. It's any group of people that say they are a family. It's true, look it up. And we serve the family and we serve the youth primarily.
You know, that really is an interesting question. It's a tough question. And it basically involves a family choosing an organization to meet their needs. And they need to recognize that the Boy Scouts of America has a program for youth, for boys and girls, that is based on unchanging principles. I go back and I look at my father's Scout handbook from over 80 years ago. And Scout oath and law, the principles are the same. Now, some of the camping techniques have changed, but the principles and family needs to know. You're choosing an organization that's based on certain principles, and if these are not what you want for your child, then perhaps you need to look at another organization.
Yeah, as a reminder, like I said earlier, and we'll close it with this, the 12 points of the Scout Law were my guiding principle throughout my entire childhood. They are what led me to my testimony. They're what led me to the priesthood, because it dovetailed in so nicely. I would expect any youth who lives by them, be they in any faith, would have the same principles as me. Because those are our principles. You know, we lay them out very clearly. We have an oath, we have a motto, we have a slogan, we have a law, we have a vision statement, we have a mission statement. And they are open for everyone to see and scrutinize and live by. So, I would like to thank our panelists for coming up and sharing their time and their expertise. And thank you very much. I'm going to hand it back over to Matt.
I love this last presentation. I just wanted to share one thing with you that emphasizes the importance of the chaplain. Trauma. 19 years ago, we were at Fort A. Peak Hill. So this is kind of what happened there. Share your experience and I'll take it.
At the 2005 National Jamboree, Wayne and I were in Sub Camp 6, and I happened to be manning the phone that day in the office. And suddenly the lights went out. We lost all power. Didn't think too much of it, didn't know what was going on. And a few minutes later, the phone rang. And I answered, Sub Camp 6. How can I help you? And they said, this is Sub Camp 7. Send your chaplain. And I said, which one? We have several. They said, all of them. Now.
The folks from Alaska, from Sub Camp 7, had been pushing a pole into place. And when they did that, there were 4 on the pole, and as they pushed that pole into place, it hit a high power wire, and all of them were put out like the stars of the points of a star, and we lost 4 chaplains. Or not 4 chaplains, we lost 4 scout leaders at that time. And I was on the other end of the phone call. We were in the chaplain's tent, and I remember we were having a very heated discussion with an individual who had mistreated one of our Catholic chaplains. And I was having that discussion with him, and I remember the phone rang, and Peter Hyman said, 4 down, possibly 5, 4 black. Now, from that point on, it was non-stop for the chaplains. And I'll never forget when Wayne Perry walked in with a handful of patches. And he said, this is a small token of appreciation, but never before have we recognized the impact that chaplains have in Scotty. I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget that that jamboree, because for chaplains, from the beginning, that happened right as the scouts were coming in, and it didn't end until the last wave of the brakeman's hand, the last train out of town. And because of the chaplains were there, lives were touched. I was ready to enjoy a final closing ceremony, and one of the individuals came to me and said, we have a boy over here who is depressed and contemplating suicide. He says, I said, what religion is he? We don't know, but we need you. So I spent the whole closing ceremony sitting with this young man, just listening to him. And that's all he needed. He just needed somebody to listen. And so you have a profound impact in your lives. And we have some of you who are, Mary Jane, chaplains and just about ready to go through this and a wood badge experience. So thanks to all of you for the impact that you have. And Wayne, thank you for impacting our lives by that small token of appreciation, which...
What you didn't say is I first met with the chaplains and said I never understood their value. And previously I traded the entire chaplain corps for small box patch. And I said, I'm here today to admit that I was very wrong. It was a very difficult night. Those poor chaplains had to sit with the young man, and I watched the chaplains would use their phone sitting next to the young man, and they would call their parents and say, Mom, all my scoutmasters are dead, but I'm alive.
When I was ready to go over to take 2 of the call boys over to visit Larry, who was one of those boys, one of those leaders on the pole, his son Kendall had actually pulled him off the pole. We didn't know whether Larry was alive or dead. And so I told the head chaplain, who was the base chaplain, who was, I think, a Methodist, that I was going to go, and he put his hand on my shoulder. And I thought he was just going to say, well, Lord bless you, or good luck. Put his hand on my shoulder, he bowed his head and gave me a blessing. And I thought I'd never been blessed by a Methodist chaplain before, but it feels so good. It's those experiences that you had. We had one chaplain that called me in the middle of all of this 2 days later, and he said, we have a boy over here who is really struggling. And I said, pray with him. And he said, he was Church of Christ. He said, can I do that? I said, pray with him. And so he did. We had Latter-day Saint chaplains giving blessings to Jewish scouts. We had Jewish chaplains who were praying with Latter-day Saint chaplains. And it was an unbelievable experience. But never again will we underestimate the value of the chaplain. So, Zuke, where is he? Oh, thank you for this wonderful hour that we've spent together. It was a good one. So, Wayne.